Oh, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Ian Baines at Nationwide, Head of Pensions. So I'm going to take you through some of the things we've been doing in the last couple of years with regard to workplace pensions and how we've used innovation and some other things to get our employees doing better things. By way of a reminder, Nationwide Building Society, one of the largest sort of savings institutions in the UK, biggest mortgage provider. Savings is a core business for us. So when we start to think about pensions, that was one of the things that really made us think hard about what we wanted our employees to do, because it aligns to what we want our customers, our members, to do, which is to save their money with us. So some facts and figures there. Couple of things to point out: 700 branches across the UK. So think about those branches next to Boots, WH Smith, whatever. They can be big, they can be small, but those people have a challenge. They're providing great service to our members on the high street as they walk into the branch, but they're not sitting at a desk all day. They're not looking at an intranet website to do things. So how do we engage with them? So that was one of our challenge. 18,500 employees, fairly fixed work base, but again, quite diverse, and as in the name, nationwide. We have this acronym in terms of how we go about business. Pride, putting our members and their money first, that's really important. So any business case to put more money into people's reward package has to be really thought through. Rewarding membership, both our members, our customers as a mutual, but also if we think of that in terms of our employees, how do we reward them? Trust, doing the right thing, excellence in service, all given, and you will all say that's true of your organisations as well. But this is what helped inform us in terms of what we wanted to do. Set the scene in terms of landscape. Those 18,500 employees, what are they doing in the way of a workplace pension? So 2/3 of them are in a defined contribution DB scheme. A third are in a defined benefit sort of scheme. Close to new entrants some years ago. A common landscape, I guess, and many of you will have similar arrangements. What we don't have is a low uptake in terms of members, employees in a workplace pension, currently about 700. So that wasn't our driver. It wasn't about getting people into something. It was what they were doing when they were in it. So we were content with our DB scheme. That'd gone through a number of changes over time. So when we started looking at this afresh 3 years ago, 2 years ago, our focus was primarily on the DC scheme. We thought the benefit design, which is a classic one, was okay. It benchmarked well against the companies we look at and benchmark ourselves against, but we felt we could do better with it. And part of the thinking behind that was both looking at what those employees were on target to get when they retired and whether it would be enough to them, but also back to that theme, our core business is about savings. We want a culture which promotes savings. Pensions is a type of savings, a very long-term savings plan. So we felt we could do better in that DC space. So lots of details there, but we basically improved the DC offering. But one of the key things we kept was this matching contribution structure, whereby there was a minimum contribution and you got a contribution from the employer. You paid a little bit more, you had that contribution matched up to a cap. But what I'll go on to talk about is the usage of that, how many people were actually taking part in that. So one of the big changes here in 2015 wasn't the benefit design, pay more in, more life cover. We will all cut our cloth accordingly in terms of our benefit design. But the really interesting thing here was that there were so few people who were paying more to get more. And we really thought about that. And what we started to do was a campaign to get people talking about pensions, be it at the branch level, be it call centres, what their aspirations were. Not the technical aspects of pensions and all the details we know that turns people off, but actually what their dreams and aspirations were. And we used a campaign, we had a great film, we had competitions, we had websites hosted by our GPP provider, and then we launched the changes that we talked about. So there was a soft period where we were warming people up. And the really interesting thing is we went from less than 10% of those 12,000 people in the GPP who were paying more to get more. We sort of turned that on its head, and we're approximately about 80% now. And part of that was evidencing the value to them, the free money that is both the employer contribution and the income tax saving, but actually why it's in their interest to do that. But also we use this sort of nudge, if you like, where we set the default they pay more to get more, and they had to proactively go into our flex benefit system and turn that down. So they're all the sort of key results from that, I guess. Engagement went through the roof. We've got lots of interest in... Sorry, question at the back? Yes. So when we launched this in 16, part of it was we reset the contributions people had to pay to get the maximum, and they could dial it down if they didn't want to pay that much. And then the following year, we'd dial it back up, and they would go into the flexible benefits window that many companies will have, and they'd have to dial it down again. So again, there was that. We were using both inertia, apathy, and some of those tricks to encourage them to stay at the higher level. But it's broadly sort of topped out around the 80% mark. And one of the consequences we hadn't expected was those people who weren't in either pension scheme, the opters out, that went down as well. So people saw the value of what we were evidencing. So I guess one of the things that we and you will be very aware of is it's not a one-stop hit. You know, you can't just do this once and expect everyone to get it. And you can't expect to extract value from what you've done if you just leave it as a one-off exercise. So part of our work over the preceding time is actually to remind people about what they should be doing and actually build on them paying more into their pension. So they're getting bigger pension pots. And what I'll take you through now is just quickly a tour through what we've been doing over the last couple of years. One of the things that we really wanted people to focus on was what their output was likely to be, what their position was likely to be when they retired, and whether what they were paying into it, being the maximum to get the maximum from Nationwide or another percentage, whether that was going to be enough to meet their needs. So to do that, you've got to answer the question, not just what you're projected to get, but what will be enough for you. So one of the things that we did with our advisors, Hymans Robertson, is use their guided outcomes statement and their guided outcomes platform. And we launched that in a paper version in October 2016, and that simply has a sort of red, amber, well, simply, it's not simple at all, but a red, amber, green status, which is telling people whether they're on track for a good outcome. Green, sort of okay, amber, red, call to arms, you need to do something if you want to be at an adequate level of pension. That went down incredibly well. I'll come on to give you some feedback from that in a moment or two. We didn't forget our DB colleagues. We launched a website for them so they could manage their pension a bit better. We didn't forget that the DC members had to manage the money with the provider, Friends Life, now part of Aviva, rebranded Aviva. So part of it was to encourage them to log on to the Friends Life website, take ownership of their pension savings, update it, manage it, so on. Then we launched the Guided Outcomes portal. And that's pretty much where we are now in terms of first quarter of usage of it. Last month before, we launched a learning module. In common with many organisations, we have a raft of things that we have to push out to our employees in the way of training and development and learning. We do it on an e-learning portal on our intranet, and we had, for the first time ever, a pensions e-learning module. Our expectation was quite low on this. We thought we'd have pushback from employees saying, oh, not another one of these. You know, only a couple of weeks ago I was doing something on health and safety. Now you want me to do something on pensions. Feedback was actually really good. We accompanied it with some videos. The theme for the videos were keep it simple, 2 or 3 themes, but actually make it fun and engaging. And part of it was that they could be showed at the branch network the sort of 10, 15 minutes before the branch opened each day, and we could have huddles and knowledge knockouts at those various sites. That went down incredibly well. Some feedback, got pensions for the first time, sort of understand it. This is really helpful, really easy to use. So that was really encouraging. We're going to do something for our DB colleagues in terms of having them a tool for them to sort of model their pension a bit better and access various things. We've still got more things to come. The face-to-face comms still really important, we feel. Doing conferences like these is really good, so we can hold the mirror up and sort of show back to our colleagues that actually we're doing good things, and actually other companies are interested in what we do. I guess the final bullet is the one I would really focus most on. So those 12,500 people in our DC, we know what they're on track for, but actually they've got to manage their pension savings a bit more. So having that management information that segments down in terms of, the group of 500 who need to be doing this, the 2,000 that need to be doing this, the couple of thousand who went on, did something but didn't follow it through. So that's the next phase for us over the coming quarters, where we can start to nudge people in that segmented way rather than a blanket message to those 12,000 people in the DC. So that's where we are. Conclusions. I guess a number of things I would pick out. Behavioural nudges really can work. Resetting that contribution level to get the maximum has worked tremendously well. Pension savings, DC in particular, your level of pension savings will be the biggest factor in whether you have a good pension outcome or not. Having a plan, having a theme, having a brand. We used the Don't Just Dream It, Plan It campaign. That was the soft launch of this, where we were saying to people, let's not talk about the technicalities about pensions, but what you aspire to, what you dream. That tagline has helped us enormously with the sort of theming at the top right hand there, in terms of that's almost become a sub-brand, but it's also helped remind us and encourage those conversations from branch managers, people managers that aren't about the technicalities about it, but are you on track for a good outcome? What are you doing about it? Have you logged into that website? Have you used the Go portal? So all of that stuff is now happening. The support from the business has been fantastic. Getting people managers, branch managers to actually talk about pensions and not be spooked by it, not be fearful of giving advice, not be fearful of they're giving away their own ignorance. That's been a really important part of this. Trade union has been a fantastic supporter of this. Aviva as our pension provider have done great work in terms of facilitating things and ultimately providing a stable platform for those increasing pension pots. And Hymans with guided outcomes and lots of other things have been tremendously supportive. Keep going, never finished in terms of engagement is a theme in all of this. So building on what we've done and thinking about what we're going to do in the years ahead is an important aspect of this. I'm going to hand over to John now just to talk about some of the work that Hymans are doing in a wider sense.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Cheers. Good afternoon, everyone. I never tire of hearing the nationwide story, not just because of Ian's flattering comments about Hymans Robertson, but I think the net impact of all the work that Ian's done has been to, get about 1,000 more staff from being off track for a good standard of living in retirement to on track. And when there's so much often negativity around DC pensions, to be part of a success like that, we are changing 1,000 people's lives, 1,000 families' lives for the better, is quite a nice feel-good moment. Now, I don't know how many of you were attending the previous session in here on financial wellness. Can we just see a quick show of hands? Great, quite a number. So certainly a couple of takeaways for me there were a lot of evidence that employees care a lot about pension provision, and indeed a lot of evidence that there can be a strong business case from productivity in terms of getting employees to a good place. The one point I would maybe take a bit of issue with was the emphasis on education. I think education can be very powerful, certainly for the engaged and interested employee, but as I think one of the top comments at the end said, people often just want to be told what to do. You know, they know they need to do something, and educating them about, you know, how much they should have in retirement, how much they should contribute, how to invest, that's quite a big ask often. And just the simple remedy here of giving them a red, amber, green, and if you're amber or red, what course of action do you need to take and execute is a very simple way of getting people through to take action. Now, I think robo guidance, as the jargon we often use in the industry, is very much here to stay. If we look at the underlying drivers, individuals are being asked to make more and more decisions themselves. So in a DC pensions, one clear example, and indeed freedom and choice is great to have that extra choice, but how do you exercise it? Secondly, the availability of financial advice from, you know, IFAs or advisors is increasingly reduced, and where you can find it's often very expensive. And then the final factor is technology is changing at such a pace with, you know, cloud technology or artificial intelligence, that the capability of some robo-guidance is kind of moving on dramatically. So I just wanted to give you a little flavour for what's influencing our world in terms of future developments. So the first bit of jargon I've got is learning with A/B testing. So A/B testing just means that you try one type of service for one individual and try a subtly different type of service for another set and see which gets the best response. And we've now been working with, I think, nearly 700,000 employees on guided outcomes. So we've built up a pretty good evidence base of what works and what doesn't work. And if I give you one example, the red call to action is quite powerful for a number of people to get them through to take action. But for others, they find the prescription sometimes kind of too expensive for them, and they're not ready to make that leap. And so we've developed a step-up plan that gets them there gradually. And I'm sure there's much more learning we can do there in terms of figuring out what works best for different personality types. Pensions dashboard's another interesting one. So just as a wee reminder, this is a kind of government initiative, so that the vision is that every citizen in the UK is able to go to a single website and find all their history of their pension savings over time. Now, at the moment, the guided outcome service that we have with Nationwide allows individuals to put in their old pension data. So we can get their current pension directly from the Nationwide system, but to get their historic DC or DB, the individuals need to, first of all, remember they've got them. Secondly, make sure the current information to hand. And thirdly, be able to interpret that statement correctly to put the right information. Now, getting all of those three things right is non-trivial. And so the idea of being able to have this pensions dashboard where it's just automatically pulled from a central place could be quite revolutionary in extending the scope of robo-guidance. And then the final area is around decumulation. So that's, again, a bit of industry jargon for you get to the point of retirement with some money in your DC pension pot. How do you spend it? Do you buy an annuity? Do you go into drawdown? And increasingly, drawdown is probably the most popular option. But it's actually quite a sophisticated, difficult vehicle to use, so much so that until about 2 or 3 years ago, the government used to insist that, first of all, you had to have hundreds of thousands of pounds to go into drawdown. Secondly, you had to have an independent financial advisor that would give you a triennial review. And thirdly, there were kind of very tightly controlled income constraints in what you could take in and take out. Now, charge on, go and invest whatever you like, choose your investment strategy, draw down whatever you like with no guidance. I find that a terribly worrying prospect. And so helping individuals set up their kind of retirement income is a pretty important area for robo-advice. So if I just elaborate on a couple of those very quickly, because I'm conscious of time and Maggie's well placed to give me a kick. So this is just an illustration of what the sort of thing we could do in terms of retirement income. So it's just an extension of the philosophy we used on the savings side. So if you've set up your income plan at the point of retirement to either take out too much money or you've got the wrong investment strategy, then you'll get a red assessment that you're likely to run out of money, and then a suggestion of what to do to set it up on a more sustainable basis. So not as good as Rich's face-to-face advice, but an awful lot better than being left to your own devices. Final one is another trendy term, gamification at the moment. So the idea here is you take the kind of fun but vacuous feel of using a computer game and combine it with the educational but sometimes dull pension tools, and you get something that's hopefully exciting and educational rather than something that's vacuous and dull. Done badly, it can be the latter. So we're kind of exploring opportunities in there, along with Abertay University, one of the leading computer games experts in the UK, and we're seeing some exciting stuff, so watch this space. So I should stop there and just say I think the foundations right now for robo-guidance are very solid, as demonstrated by the nationwide evidence, but I think the future is going to be really rich and exciting. So I should stop there.
Thank you very much indeed,
Thank
John.
you.
That's been great. And no kicks needed, and I'm wearing the wrong shoes for that. So thank you very much to John and Ian. Sadly, the clock has beaten us, so we don't have time for any questions, but are you both around at lunchtime? Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much indeed, John and Ian. Thank you.